Today's speed round is brought to you by Verizon. Peter King, Mike Florio here for another half hour or so. Let's get to it. Which doesn't belong and why edition of the Verizon 5G speed round, Peter. Let's begin with quarterbacks taken in round one after the first two picks in the draft. Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. Which doesn't belong and why?
I would say Trey Lance because I think it is most likely that those other two guys are going to play before Trey Lance does, even though you would think that's a surprise because Trey Lance goes number 3. But I think if Garoppolo stays healthy and the 49ers are winning, he hangs on to the job.
I'll say it's Justin Fields because I think he's got the easiest path to being the week one starter, even though when the Bears went down this road in 2017 with Mitchell Trubisky, they did give Mike Glennon the first month of the season to prove that he wasn't the answer. But I think Fields will leapfrog Andy Dalton and play week one. And I think after I've had a chance, because we've kind of gone back and forth on this, and I'm content to say now I think Fields is the most likely to be the week one starter. I may have said something different earlier this week. I really can't recall. But if you can't beat out Andy Dalton, all due respect to Andy Dalton, why did they give up next year's first-round pick to go get you? It's that simple. And I think Fields has every chance and will be given every chance to beat out Andy Dalton, Peter.
I think you're right, but I don't necessarily think that I think he's definitely going to play before Lance does. And whether that's week 1 or week 5, you know it's coming.
Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills. That was the next cut of quarterback taken late round 2, early round 3 by the Buccaneers, Vikings, and Texans, respectively. Which doesn't belong and why? Trask, Mond, Mills.
I'd say Davis Mills. That to me was the one pick in this draft of every pick other than, say, Alex Leatherwood, where I just said, what? You got to be kidding me. Alex Leatherwood, 17. But to me, Davis Mills was so compelling because it said so much. And I don't care that Nick Caserio says that this, in essence, this has nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. Yes, it does. It certainly does. When you have one pick in the top 80 and you pick a quarterback, even though the only franchise player on your team right now is a quarterback, it says a lot about the quarterback. So to me, I think Davis Mills is the one that totally sticks out there.
I think the ship has sailed, though, on Deshaun Watson and the Texans. The question is, when will they be able to trade him, and will they be able to find a partner before he potentially lands on the commissioner exempt list all year long and they pay him more than $10 million to not play? That's what they're hoping to avoid. Either way, he's not going to be on the field for them this year or ever, so they got to move forward. And they've got Tyrod Taylor for now. And they traded for Ryan Finley, and now they use that draft pick on Davis Mills. To me, the one that doesn't stand out is Kellen Mond, or that does stand out among the others is Kellen Mond, because I think he's in the perfect position to both develop and compete. And look, the Vikings are in a tough contractual spot with Kirk Cousins, and I don't think he's going to be there
Very
in 2023.
Tough.
And Cousins has told me, I feel no compulsion to extend my contract. Well, the Vikings aren't going to be able to franchise tag him as a practical matter. They got to have a plan B. And plan B between now and the end of the 2022 season could become plan A if Kellen Mond develops the way that he could. And the fact that Sims had him installed at number 4 on his list ahead of Fields and Lance really stands out to me. So I'm fascinated by what Mond possibly can do. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, the top 3 receivers drafted by the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Eagles, respectively. Which doesn't belong and why?
I think Jalen Waddle, because not only is he going to be used, obviously, a lot in the regular offense and perhaps every down, but I also think that Brian Flores is going to use him as an explosive player in the return game. It's possible, not likely, but it's possible that they have drafted a wide receiver and they have drafted Devin Hester. Because he has the kind of return ability. The way they look at this guy, he has the kind of return ability that could impact the game as much as his ability as a receiver.
I'm going to go with Smith, number one, because I think he's incredibly talented, and he was unfairly knocked for only being 166 pounds at the Indianapolis medical check. But also the psychology of receivers being drafted, not the first one off the board, and also not the first one from your school off the board. That extra level of motivation that will light the fire for a guy like Devontae Smith to be even better than he otherwise would have been if he'd been the first receiver taken. It's the Michael Thomas dynamic when he fell to round 2 behind a bunch of receivers who ended up being, frankly, nothing in the NFL. That pissed him off so much, Peter, that it willed him to be great. And I think Devontae Smith can take the fact that Jalen Waddle went before him, Jamar Chase went before him, he fell down to the bottom of the top 10, that he can use that as that extra thing that maybe separates him in a way that he otherwise wouldn't have separated.
Here's the one thing that really sticks out in my pre-draft research this year. I had a veteran general manager who is not given to saying such things. And he said, Peter, Devontae Smith is one of the best football players I've ever scouted. And, you know, you hear that and you say, whoa, that's an amazing statement from a guy who's been around the league for as long as this guy has. And I think the reason why so many people fell in love with Devontae Smith, and why, in my opinion, if he continues to do this in Philadelphia, he will be a huge fan favorite. And that is, he, even at his size, he is a physical receiver who wins the contested balls. And, you know, most of the guys who are going to cover him are going to be bigger than he is. So that is what is going to be really interesting to watch. I'm fascinated by the pick of Devontae Smith. I think that's going to be he's going to be such a fun player to watch in the next few years.
Let's flip it over to the defense. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah of the Browns, Christian Barmore of the Patriots, and Trevin Moehrig, defensive players who slipped in the draft. Which doesn't belong and why?
I will say Christian Barmore because, and without any doubt, every team has a plan for who they pick in this draft. But I think Christian Barmore is interesting to consider in this case because if you get drafted by the Patriots as an interior defensive lineman, Bill Belichick has an exact thought about how you're going to be used and how you're going to be used from opening day on. And so my feeling is that you are going to see, probably as an impact player early on, Christian Barmore have the best chance to be that.
And these guys slipped out of round 1 because there was some talk about his work ethic, even though Nick Saban came out and defended him, and Belichick's got that pipeline to Nick Saban. I'm sure Belichick knows everything there is to know about Nick Saban, the king of the ands and the buts in the draft reports, and you're going to get a candid, unvarnished look from Saban, and Belichick clearly satisfied with that. I'll go with Owusu-Koramoah. The Browns considered taking him in round 1. He continued to slide to round 2. They traded up to get him with the Macho Man pick. Remember Macho Man preening around on the stage? Not the real Macho Man, but a guy who impersonates him. They got Owusu-Koramoah, and they were thrilled to get him. 3-down linebacker, will be on the field, will make things happen, and gives them a nice presence between an excellent front line of the defense and a very good back end. He could end up being a great player in that defense. All right, general managers criticized for their drafts this year. Which doesn't belong and why? Mike Mayock, Kevin Colbert, and Nick Caserio. I don't know why Colbert's on the list. Maybe he doesn't belong just for that reason. But Mayock, Colbert,
Kevin
Caserio,
Colbert does not belong on this list. Kevin Colbert doesn't belong on this list. And I think probably people put him on the list because they're saying, why did you pick Najee Harris instead of the best available offensive lineman, at 24? And I think that the Steelers have something in mind. And what they have in mind is using Najee Harris as what he wants to be in the NFL. And I talked to him last Saturday, and what he wants to be is he wants to be an every down running back who is used the way they used Le'Veon Bell. That used a lot in the passing game, used obviously between the tackles, but obviously having enough juice to get outside the tackles as well. And so I think the Steelers thought, let's get this great offensive weapon right here and fill in on the offensive line after this where in, rounds 2, 3, 4, there are usable players and players we can work with after that.
I agree with you about that, and Colbert told me this week that they do intend to use him as a 3-down back. Mayock stands out to me just because I feel like he's being set up to be the next guy out in Las Vegas. Where's Gruden the past week? Has there been anything from Gruden? Has he spoken to anyone? Did he do any of the press conference? It was all Mayock, Mayock, Mayock. He's the one who's being hung out to dry, and if they fail this year, I think Mayock is the guy that Gruden is going to push overboard, even though Gruden is the guy who's driving the bus. And he's driven it over Paul Gunther, and I think he's going to drive it over Mike Mayock unless the Raiders get to the postseason this year. All right, let's take a break. When we return, our Friday PFT Live draft. We'll do that right after this.
Pro Football Talk is brought to you by Verizon, built right for business.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.